If your team is still managing projects in Excel and hoping for miracles, this episode is going to be your intervention. Paul Koetke has built over 100 PMO systems using Smartsheet, and what he's about to share could save your company millions. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate you being here. So let's start off with the problem. How come so many project management efforts fall flat even when they have tools in place?
Oh, man, there are a lot of big reasons why this happens. I found that one of the biggest ones, this was from a great study that Smartsheet did a couple of years ago, was that people are focusing too much on the deadlines of when work is supposed to be done. And there's this fixation on, hey, our product is launching in 3 months from now. And oftentimes, what gets missed is that middle work. What are the incremental steps that we're going to take day by day? Let's take this big project that we're doing. Let's break it down into nice bite-sized pieces that we can accomplish on a regular basis. And if we can keep doing that, then we can hit those deadlines in the longer run.
Totally makes sense. And I agree with you. Extreme. I used to have a CEO who used to be like, oh, you finished the sprint. Why didn't you start the next sprint immediately? Because the actual scheduled end date isn't until Friday and it's Wednesday. So there's
Yep.
still some people working. Oh, but get them started. I can't. It doesn't work that way. And he'd
You
get
have
mad
to
like
work with the cadence.
yeah, and
Yep.
I'd let them go home early or whatever after they heck, if I gave you 20 things to do during this sprint and you got them done 2 days early, I'm going to reward you by sending you home. I'm not going to worry that there's 25 more due dates coming up because those aren't yet assigned. So who cares? I think
Exactly. Take it
people
easy,
focus
keep it fresh.
yeah, people focus too much on checking the boxes off and not enough about their people, I think, in my opinion. So you helped Johnson and Johnson, you helped Cushman and Wakefield overhaul their PMOs. What kind of things were they struggling with before you stepped in?
The big one is getting visibility into everything that's going on. I have had so many clients that come to me and say, hey, Paul, listen, we are running hundreds, sometimes thousands of different projects, and we're absolutely just drowning in this. Oftentimes, these companies have just a wild west of project management. You got some people doing it in Excel because everyone has Excel on their computer. You've got some people saying, hey, I'm going to try Smartsheet. Some other people are maybe in ClickUp or using MS Project if you're really serious about project management. And the biggest thing that they're coming with to me is saying is, hey, we need a cohesive system. And we need people to be speaking the same language, to be able to work together, to be able to communicate together, but then be able to roll this up to leadership and have leadership be able to understand what's actually going on across these giant portfolios of projects so that they can make the decisions they need to be able to make to keep things running forward, to keep the company moving in an agile and adaptable way.
So, do you think that the reason Excel is still so widely used for project tracking is because it's so commonly on machines?
Absolutely. I heard a stat a couple of years ago that Excel is still the number one project management tool out there, which boggles my mind. But it's because every single corporate computer comes with your Microsoft suite of tools, Excel being one of those. It's there. Every single person has access to it. And quite frankly, everyone's fairly comfortable in it. Most people have been using Excel for at least 10, 20 years. So it's second nature. Hey, what am I going to use? I have some tools at my disposal. Excel seems like the most natural fit based on what I have today. Let's go there.
So, do you have any examples where a client's spreadsheet-based process was costing them money?
Absolutely. So recently, I was working with a particular client and they were doing some real estate acquisitions. And what was happening here is they were opening up these new storefronts and they were doing everything in Excel. And so each project manager had a couple of their Excel sheets that they get together at the end of every week and sit in a room together where the director of operations would then plug this information into their master Excel sheet and giving these individual reports, everything went in there. Then they take this master Excel sheet and hand that up to leadership. The issue that was happening was that for them to collect all this information and pull it up to the leadership level, by the time it got up there, would be about 2 to 3 weeks later. And so some of these stores were missing their openings. and causing cascading effects from this, which at the end of the day is reducing their revenue potential because they're buying these new stores. They need to have them open so their customers can start visiting and paying money and driving that revenue stream. And because of these delays that were happening, they're losing weeks or months at a time on each store.
Is there like a common aha moment that clients have after they adopt Smartsheet with your framework?
Yes. The biggest one is always when we take a look at a portfolio level dashboard. So we build out dashboards for the major stakeholder groups and to allow them to see, hey, here are all of your projects, or if you're a project manager, here are all of your tasks across your projects. But for the leadership level, hey, you have 20 projects in the pipeline right now. 5 of them are going really well. You've got 6 that are about to go live next week, or the store is going to open. And here are 3 that are struggling. And here's what's going on. Here where the blockers are. This is in real time. So you can open this up when you're sitting down at your desk in the morning saying, what do we need to do today? Boom. Here's exactly what you need to do in real time to make sure that you can support the people that need the support and make sure that everything keeps going along.
So that leads me to, we mentioned that you've implemented over 100 PMO systems. Are there any patterns that you see in what's broken before you're called in?
In terms of what's broken, I think a big pattern that I often see, and this is a base step that I take with all of my clients, is aligning on terminology. I can't tell you how many different times I go into a new project with a new client and we're saying, hey, all right, this is what we're defining as a project. And then someone else comes in and says, actually, I call that a sub project, and the larger project actually has multiple pieces to it. Or here's what we're talking about tasks. And what I find is that oftentimes people aren't speaking the same language at the same company. Obviously, yes, 9 times out of 10, they're all speaking English in the US, but they're not using the same terminology. Or when they are using the same terminology, they oftentimes mean something different. And this is something that I see across the board. And when we're going into these projects, the first thing we do is say, hey, let's sit down. Let's talk about what this means. Can we agree on the structure? I'm hearing this word over here. I'm hearing that word over there. Are they the same? Are they different? And if so, which one should we use going forward?
Interesting. So definitely some pattern. What do you consider the difference between just a functional tool and an integrated solution?
A functional tool works at the individual level. So you might have, back to the Excel example, someone might have created an Excel workbook that works really well for them, but it's not integrated with the work that other people do, whether across project management or in other areas of the company as well too. One of the things I really like about Smartsheet in particular, and a lot of other work management platforms do this, is the ability to integrate with other platforms, connect through the API so that you can work with other areas of the company seamlessly. One of the things I oftentimes see is connecting to a CRM like Salesforce and saying, hey, every time that we sell a new project or acquire a new location or whatever that happens to be, the sales team goes over there and says, hey, all right, this deal's closed won. We're moving forward with it. Execution team, it's your turn to go in here and start doing this. That information can pass seamlessly across to the project management team that's now going to deliver on that work. That to me is a truly integrated system.
Makes sense. I agree. I totally agree. So do you think, actually a better way to ask this question, what role do you think automation plays in keeping teams focused and aligned?
Automation's big, but automation can also be a little bit of a double-edged sword depending on how you're using it. I think automation's really good for tedious, repetitive tasks, the kind of stuff where you'd spend all day doing double entry of data and probably get some of it wrong because, hey, let's face it, we're all human. Where I think automation comes up short is when we're taking out some of the human elements that should remain there. One of the big things in Smartsheet, caution people to use it wisely, is when it comes to automated notifications. We can automate the heck out of things and send people a bajillion notifications every day when they have tasks coming due or when something's gone off the rails. And hey, we have a red status ball that's popping up here. And actually, that's a really good one that you should do an automation for if it's urgent and important. But what people don't need in their lives these days is more emails. So I don't recommend automating emails as much as you possibly can. But the simple copy, paste, record a date, mark this item as closed when the status changes, automate the heck out of that. We all want to do less tedious, just data crunching and allow us to do more of that human element work where creative thinking is involved.
Yeah, we have a content creation section of our business, and one of the things that we utilize in our system is we have status fields, like what status is this piece of content at right now? And when we switch it, it assigns it to the appropriate person and it gives them a certain number of days to get it done. And it's just super effective because if person A is working on something and then they change the status to be like, I need my thumbnails done, then it assigns it to the thumbnail designer and it gives them a certain number of days to do it. And then when he switches it to review, then the person responsible for reviewing it reviews it. But if then they find that there's some changes that need to be made, they switch it to edits requested. What goes signed back to the same person, gives them a little bit of a
Yep.
smaller due date because now they're only editing, they're not completely creating. And it's just so much easier because I can't tell you when you don't use automation, how many times people they forget to assign it to the person. They don't give them a due
it,
date or the due date's so
this,
from the past. It's just such a disaster.
yeah, this makes sure that things don't slip through the cracks. Because if you're doing that manually, you need to assign it to someone, you need to give it a due date. You might need to change the status in there or add some description about what needs to happen. And then next thing you know, it's, but wait, I sent that over. No, you didn't. I'm sure I sent it over. Okay, where is it? This was due 3 weeks ago, but we forgot about it because somehow it got misplaced or misaligned there on the status. But if you can automate that, you take out the human error element of, oh, I need to do 3 steps to just change the status. Let's make that one step. And then it's super easy. It's going to be consistent. It's going to happen on time for you.
Yeah, I think it's funny how it's the little tiny things that can derail you in a big project. And I think it's because for the most part, we pay attention to the big things and it's the small things that you just, oh, that'll get taken care of. We don't have to worry about that. So what is your
But
process? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm also going to add in there that it's those small things that can shake your confidence too. Because those small things can be very important towards hitting a deadline or making sure that something gets done correctly. And if you're not sure that they're going to get done, you're going to bed thinking, oh, shoot, did everything happen? Is everything being tracked appropriately? Are we going to miss something? And that can have a seriously eroding effect to your own personal confidence as well as team morale, too. If these things start happening over and over again, it becomes a perpetuating system.
Yeah, I drive my team crazy because I come from a Microsoft project background, so
Yep.
dependencies are really important to me. And we use
Mm-hmm.
ClickUp. ClickUp has dependencies, and I utilize them all the time. And they'll say, "Hey, I can't close my task." Well, how could you do your task? What do you mean? Tom had to finish the this first before you could do what you're doing. So how
Yep.
he hasn't finished it yet. That's why you can't close your task. Oh, and so it's like little things like that would get you so off the rails. Dependencies take care of that. As you were talking about Microsoft Project, I was visualizing in my head the each step, each piece of the project plan and the bars that would go across, and it starts when this one ends, and you're dependent,
Mm,
that sort of thing. And it saves your butt all the way because you're making sure that the little most minute details are being taken care of. I think that's really
yep.
important.
Yep. Exactly. But it's also important to find a balance that works well for the entire team. I step into a lot of situations where we've got someone like you who has a great experience in Microsoft Project, really understands project management to the core, and then maybe their team has never seen a project before, ever. And so it's like, all right, let's find where that middle zone is going to be where people aren't going to be scared off by it because there are a lot of people that have seen MS Project and said, whoa, I don't even know what's going on here, and just they don't touch it. And if no one's putting in information, then the whole thing's dead in the water. So a big part is figuring out where is everyone on the team at from a comfort and experience level on this to figure out where that midpoint is going to be. What's going to be a little bit of a compromise for everyone so we can all work together as a team. And the answer is unique for everyone or for every single team. But finding that is when you hit that sweet spot, then things work really well.
So how do you identify project bottlenecks before they cause major issues?
So that is where we do need to use the Gantt chart and do need to use the predecessors or predecessor relationships in there. Because if you are just kind of willy-nilly letting it ride, you're probably going to run into those bottlenecks and they're going to hurt when you get there. There's a lot of really good tools out there for doing resource management planning to be able to understand, hey, we've got all these tasks in here, but who's assigned to which tasks? What's their allocation percentage looks like? I'm sure you've got something like this in ClickUp as well. MS Project has had it forever. Smartsheet has a really solid tool for that as well. So that you can forecast out and see months or years into the future and say, hey, we should think about hiring another development engineer because in 3 months from now, we're going to be overbooked for the next foreseeable future. And when you can do that, when you can get all of your data in there, that's going to allow you to make smarter decisions for your business so that you hopefully don't run into those bottlenecks. And if you do, you can at least minimize them and approach them with that knowledge of when they're coming up and what they're going to look like.
Oh yeah, like 25 years ago when I worked for the restaurant delivery service as their CTO, that was how I convinced them to bring in an onshore team that worked in the office because they were really big on prior to me coming in, the three owners handled everything and they were not technically savvy at all. And so what they did was they outsourced to a team in Sri Lanka. And they had a guy here in America who was like their owner of their company who would review the code, meet with me when I needed him. He was really great and his team was really great. But there were things that I would see in project plans and be like, I'd tell my CEO, they're gonna get to a point here in about 2 weeks where these little one-off bug fixes and things that you want done, they're not going to be able to do it and still make progress on the project. What do you suggest we do? This is the time to bring in an internal team on site to supplement that work. And the way I sold it to him was I said, okay, so if those people in Sri Lanka work from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m., and then our guys working from 8 to 5, you really have hardly any time during the day where work's not being accomplished. And like his eyes
Yep.
lit up. Wow. I could almost have 24-hour team. Exactly, you could.
Yeah.
But the only way I could prove that to him was to show him the resource plan and how, look, as we move forward, the number of man hours we're going to need to complete this stuff expands to the point where it fills up everybody in the team's busy full time. Now what do we do?
Mhm.
So what's
Then you're reaching that breaking point.
yeah, and you crash and burn. That's the problem because
Yep.
you didn't see it ahead of time. So what's the weirdest or maybe most chaotic project dashboard you've ever had to clean up?
Oh boy. There have been some good ones. I would say the most chaotic dashboard I had to clean up. And it wasn't so much as a cleanup as a designing, but a complete redirect here. I was working with a particular client and they were managing a series of projects for a hospital. And this hospital was working with all these external consulting services to provide different areas of support. And so my project sponsor said, hey, I want a dashboard that's going to pull together all these different services that we use and give me a bird's eye view across all of them. Now, the tricky part was that every single consulting firm that was working with them reported out their data in radically different ways. I had people saying, hey, we can get you data in a CSV file. Okay, I can work with that. I had people saying, we can send you screenshots or PDFs of the data. Absolutely not. Other people saying, yeah, we think we can export it get a live export into a Google Sheet. And then I'm trying to pull all of this stuff together. And ultimately, we just had to reset expectations here to just say, hey, this data is so radically different from each other. We're better off having separate dashboards for each one of these teams with their data presented in their way. That's going to make a lot more sense for you. And then we're just going to aggregate those into essential, more of a directory portal for you so that you can go to one place still and have direct access to everything else that you need from one click away. It was a big shift from what they originally wanted, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they got the information that they needed. in a different manner than they were expecting, but it was all there. It happened. But man, that was tough.
So, if you could outlaw one project management behavior forever, what would it be?
Ooh, if I could outlaw one project management behavior, geez, I think that would be status update meetings. There is nothing that kills me more than watching a room full of people sit down and go around the room and say, hey, here's what I accomplished in the last week. I used to work at a company that would have weekly engineering meetings, and the engineering leadership, the CEO of the company, the COO, and then the entire staff of engineers would go sit in the conference room. It's about 30 people in here. And they would go around the room saying, hey, here's where we're at with each project. I did the math one day and I realized that each meeting, I didn't know exactly everyone's salaries, but I had some rough estimations in there. Each meeting cost that company $80,000. Yeah. Do you know what you can do with $80,000? First of all, you could probably hire another junior engineer for that much and make a much bigger team. But you should be able to put all this information into a project management tool. And then you show up at that meeting and say, hey, these 4 different projects have flagged, hey, we need additional support. We're stuck on something. Let's talk about those 4 and spend 20 minutes talking about it, maybe with a broader group so we can get some different perspectives here. But that meeting should only be 30 minutes, maybe.
Say I just calculated in if that's a weekly meeting at $80,000, it's $4,160,000 a year that they're spending on that one meeting. And my people that listen to the show will tell you they know me well. I think 99% of meetings are a complete waste of time, especially for development teams if everybody's doing their job. And that's why
Yeah.
with my decentralized A team method, I preach putting the right people in the right seats on the bus and then letting them do their job. You stay out of the way, leader. You're not supposed to be in the, you're just supposed to be there to give them the wealth of your knowledge and help them through situations. I tell my clients, your number one job for your dev team is to remove roadblocks. You're the hammer.
Yes.
You're the hammer. You go to the marketing guy and say, all right, you wanted these reports done. Your team's not giving my team enough time. Either you schedule the time with them or we're taking it off the sprint. It's that simple. You got to be the heavy. And having a meeting with 30 people plus like the entire senior management staff for an hour or 2 hours just to discuss status that you could easily find in a project management tool somewhere if you were using one.
Exactly.
It's such a waste of
Exactly.
money.
If you're doing it right, you don't need those meetings. What you do need to do is make sure that as a leader, you are there when someone raises their hand and says, I need help, I'm stuck. And that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's when it's hammer time. That's when you go and say, all right, I'm going to move these roadblocks out of the way. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this happen so that you can keep operating and driving at this efficient pace together.
I used to tell my team, they'd say, oh, well, the operations department, they're telling me they're too busy to help with this. And I said, yeah, but they made it a top priority. They said that it was a top priority. So tell them it has to get done. I have no leverage over them. I go, sure you do. What's the leverage? They want us to order them 5 laptops for their salespeople. Tell them that's not going to get done. And if they don't have time to meet with you for the project, then you don't have time to order the 5 laptops. I can't say that. Yeah, you can, because I just told you that you can. And who are and I asked them, who are they going to complain to if they don't like what you said to them? Me. So I'm going to smile and say, yeah, I'm the one who told them to tell you that, because they don't understand team. One of the things I think some people don't grasp is just because you're on the IT team doesn't mean that the marketing team isn't a part of your team. You're all working for the same company.
Yep.
Doesn't make sense to hold other departments back. I used to get requests like, Mike, this filter isn't needed on this report. Says who? Like I used to audit the reports. When I'd first put a report out, I'd put little triggers and I'd had a table in the database that'd tell me how many times each feature was used. And I'd say, this feature's been used 1,200 times in the last 2 months. How can you say it's obsolete? And what it was,
clearly they're using it.
Their department didn't use it. Other departments did. And that's what I'm getting at. People are so like siloed. They think of themselves as, I am the marketing department, not I am part of company XYZ. And it's huge.
At the end of the day, you're all in the same boat together. You need to row that boat together.
And everybody needs, and you can't all be rowing on one side or you just go in circles. That's the
Exactly.
question.
Spot on.
Yeah. What smart sheet formula or function do you think deserves its own TED Talk? Like it's just that good.
Ooh, I would say the join collect formula. It's actually two separate functions work plugged together there. And that one is very underrated in my opinion. It can allow you to pull so much data and then do things with it. Or I guess let me rephrase that. The collect formula specifically, because you can run max around a collect formula, you can run a min, you can pull distinct values out of it. It just allows you to do so much. I can't think of a single project that I've done that I haven't used the collect formula. But so many people just don't even know it exists. It's one of those that just flies under the radar. If you're not using it and you're a smart sheet user, you are missing out.
It's something like that taught me to ask questions of developers. Are they familiar with this feature or that feature of their language that they're using? Because I one time had to do a code review on a fairly new developer to the company. And I hit this part where it's if this, then this, else if this, then this, else if this, then this. And it was like basically testing a variable came in, let's say A, and it has a number
Yep.
from 0 to 9. And he's testing if it's 0, do this. If it's 1, do this. If it's 2, do this. I said, why? I pointed at it. Why this? Why this massive block of code? And he goes, well,
Yep.
how else am I supposed to do it? And I said to myself, he doesn't know. And I said, so have you never heard of switch case? And he said, what's that? Ha ha, now I know why you wrote it this way. And you teach them. But it taught me to ask, hey, I got a question for you. Have you ever heard of switch case before? And then if they say yes, then I can say, okay, so then why did you use this approach? And maybe they have a
Mhm.
reason. But it's just, I don't know, it's just funny because you get human beings, we get to a point of knowledge about something where when we have to teach it to somebody else, we're not that good at it because we take so much of the process for granted that
Yep.
we by osmosis in our head we get from step 1 to step 2, but the person
It's just
doing
a
it is going
natural
to,
connection for
yeah,
you, but maybe
right,
not for.
someone else going to be like, I don't understand how you got to step 2 in the first place. You have to ask questions. But that leads me to this. So if a company is still stuck in spreadsheet chaos and they know that it's holding them back, what's the first small step they should take to start fixing it today?
Yeah. First small step is to, I mentioned this earlier on our call today. First step is to start talking about terminology. There,
Define the terms. Yeah.
define the terms because there are so many times when people are fighting about a problem saying, you guys are doing it all wrong. And then they realize they're not even talking about the same thing. So
So true.
I would say that is the very first step. The second step, then shortly after that, is develop a standard. Make sure you're speaking the same language, but then you're using it the same way. And if you can do those two things, regardless of what platform and regardless of what type of work you're managing, those are going to be the first two foundational steps that you absolutely cannot skip.
Excellent answer. And I totally agree with you. I actually think defining terms is something people should do pretty much every time they add a new team member. I almost feel like maybe this is actually an idea that just hit me. I almost feel like maybe the leaders should come up with a department dictionary or glossary that they can
Yeah.
give out to new employees because we do tend, it's one of the reasons why I teach my tech executives to avoid jargon when they talk. We tend to talk in a terminology that people within our company understand, but no one, if you dropped someone in there out of the blue, they'd be like, what the heck are they talking about? What even language are they using? So I think defining terms
And
is very important.
And even for people at the company, have you ever had one of these experiences where you're sitting in a room and you hear a word and you're like, I have no idea what that means? Like literally no idea. And then maybe you or someone else raise your hand and says, sorry, I might be the only one here that doesn't know this, but could you explain whatever that term was? And then like half the room's like, yeah, we don't know either. Please tell us. It's like, whoa.
And
most
yet,
most people just stay silent through that and are just like nodding, okay, I don't know what that means, but we're gonna roll with it.
and yet someone thinks everyone knows.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And maybe
It's
enough
actually,
people know, but it's one of these traps you can fall into.
what's funny, it's not, like my wife and I, when we moved here to Las Vegas, this house is strange. It has a strange, what's the word I'm trying, a strange acoustics. So like we have a
Mm-hmm.
situation where we have like our living room, and then there's like a counter with a sink on the other side of the counter, but it's open into the kitchen, so you can talk through
Yep.
the
Yep.
opening. If you walk from the living room facing the kitchen and walk into the kitchen and ask a question, I guarantee you we will not understand exactly what you said. We'll think we understood. And so when we first moved here, we started having these little like bickering arguments about things. And finally I said to her, I don't understand something. We've never had this problem before. The only thing different is where we live. And how can where we live change it? So I started asking her, hold on a second. What did you hear? And then she would tell me it was never what I said. And so then
Oh.
we learned something really crucial. If Mike asks a question and it sounds weird, maybe we should confirm that's what he actually said. And vice versa. When my wife asks a question,
Yeah.
I confirm. Because,
Wait till you get all the way into the kitchen or all the way into the living room. Don't ask from the middle of the hallway.
and it's really weird because it mangles what you're saying and it makes it sound like you said something else. I don't know. It's defining terms and just understand. It's one of the key fall downs in communication. It's why the feedback
Yep.
loop is of all it exists. Here's what I want you to do. Can you repeat back to me what I just said? You know, I mean,
Hmm.
it's obviously more complicated than that, but that's a simplified version. And if they can't repeat back to you what you just said, they're never going to be able to do what you asked them to do.
Yep.
And if you don't understand what, let's say they use an acronym like RSI. Can you get me that RSI number by 5 o'clock? And you're like, what the heck is RSI? You're never going to be
Yeah.
able to give them that.
But you can even say that back. I could tell you, sure, I'll get you that RSI. I still don't know what that
Yeah,
means.
you don't know what it means. And I don't know why people are so afraid to ask the question though. It's why one of the things we do in our onboarding in our company is
Hmm.
we over stress that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I've actually had people say, well, of course there's a thing as a stupid question. What if you gave me an assignment and 3 months later I started asking you, when you gave me the assignment again, I started asking you the same questions. So I would assume that in the 3 months time, you forgot. I
And
mean,
that's normal.
you don't have, people don't ask questions about things they understand just to waste time. I would hope not. So if you're asking me a question, I'm going to assume you need the answer and I'm going to give you the answer. I'm not going to call it a dumb question. I'm not going to laugh at you. And it works because then we do get some rather silly questions sometimes. But I'd say to myself, they asked. At least they asked. The hell to pay is when they just go off and do whatever. And then they come back all smiles and you're like, but that isn't anything like what I asked you to do. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's
And
way worse. That's way worse. And for someone delivering that, rip the band-aid off, ask the
yeah,
question, even if it
that's the
feels
question.
awkward, because sure, it's 30 seconds of awkward while you're asking a question, which is actually the smart thing to do versus, spending another week working on something and then finding out you spent a week doing something that was not what was needed or counterproductive to what needs to be done.
Like
That's
your
way more painful.
or like your scenario of being in a meeting with a bunch of people and someone uses a term and you don't know what it means, and so you ask, and then a bunch of other people say, "Oh yeah, I don't know what that meant either." It gives you an ego boost that, hey, I not only helped myself just now, I just helped out these other 8 people who were too afraid to ask the question. And
Yeah.
so,
And then when I do that, I have no shame in those situations. When I do that, people come up to me after the meeting, they're like, wow, thank you for asking that. You're so brave. I was totally clueless, but wanted to know. And I was like, sure, you're welcome. I was clueless too.
why I asked? Yeah, exactly. Paul, this has been a great conversation. Why don't you let the listeners know how they can connect with you?
Absolutely. Feel free to check out ketkeconsulting.com or find me and reach out to me on LinkedIn, Paul Koetke, and looking forward to connecting with you all there.
Awesome. Paul, thanks so much for sharing your expertise and real world results. It was really insightful and refreshingly practical. I really have to say, like, you're very down to earth in your opinion of things. So thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Mike, thank you as well. This is a really fun conversation. We talked about a lot of really great things here, and
Yeah,
I had a wonderful time. So thank you.
I had a lot of fun myself. If you want to dig deeper into what's actually breaking inside engineering organizations, take the Firefighter CTO Diagnostic at firefightercto.com and find out what's really going on.